So speaking of comic opera, so comic opera in England was called Ballad Opera, and John Gay's The Beggar's Opera is one of the earliest example of ballad opera in England. So that's the name for English comic opera, is ballad opera. Then opera seria. What's an opera seria? An opera seria is a serious opera, as the word itself suggests, is a serious opera. And this guy here is named, that's a different question. This composer was Gluck, and he was concerned about several aspects of opera, and particularly he was trying to reform opera. And he was criticizing the excessive ornamentations of the singers, so the excessive virtuosity on the stage of the singers. For the third quiz, there was Mozart's Symphony, which is the quiz number 3, and in which form that piece is. In other words, what's the form of the first movement of Mozart's Symphony number 40, which is one of the pieces in the third quiz? It's sonata form, right? Sonata form. It's one of the last topic that I covered in the slides, in the lectures. And what are the three, that's a different question again, what are the three main elements of sonata form? Are exposition, development, and recapitulation. So exposition, development, and recapitulation. These are the three elements of sonata form. Next question. Remember that the next question is about the development in sonata form. The development is unstable, so based on unstable chords, so unstable harmonies, and frequent modulations, so frequent changes of key. So from one key to the other key. How do you describe the minuet form? So the only way to memorize this question is to know this question is to memorize this. So A subdivided into AB repeated, B subdivided into CD, and then C subdivided into AB, but without repetition the second time. The same thing with rondo form. I ask you, what is a rondo form? And you have to tell me that is AB, ABA, form. Here it is. So rondo form, let me scroll down. So rondo form is a ABACA form. And is sonata form a ternary form or a binary form? It's a ternary form because it has ABA. So when you have ABA, it's always a ternary form. When it's a AB, it's a binary form, right? Stamitz, why it was important? Because he was the first composer to standardize symphonies in 4 movements. I talked about that earlier, that from the late 18th century, the symphony was in 4 sections, so in 4 movements. He was one of the first to standardize symphonies in 4 movements. And we talked about Haydn too, that he was one of the father of the string quartet. Where did he live? For which court? In which court did he live? Was the Esterhazy court here in Vienna, right? In Vienna, in Austria. Okay. And I want to know the name of the person. Next question. Who collaborated with Mozart for these 3 operas here, Don Giovanni, Le Nozze di Figaro, and Così fan tutte. And his name was Lorenzo Da Ponte, right? Here it is. Lorenzo Da Ponte was the collaborator of Mozart when he composed these 3 operas. Okay. And then another question, the Singspiel. That's very easy. What's a Singspiel? A Singspiel basically is a comic opera, but in German. So not in English, not in Italian, but in German. And who completed Mozart Requiem Mass, which is one of the last compositions Mozart composed? Actually, he did not finish that piece because he died before he was able to finish it. But who finished it for him? His student, who was whose name was Franz Xaver Süssmayr. Now, this question is very important. You have to remember for the rest of your life. How many symphonies did Beethoven compose? The famous Beethoven, 9 symphonies. Beethoven, 9 symphonies. So Beethoven composed 9 symphonies. All very, very important. And we talked about romantic music, romanticism in music. What was the lead? Remember, I talked about this a little bit. The German lead was a German song for piano and voice. And program music, different question. Program music is music that is based on a story, so depicts a story or a scene. Which is exactly the opposite. I'm going to skip this question for a second. It's exactly the opposite of absolute music. Because absolute music is music that has no pictorial or literary association. So is music just music, basically, just music for the sake of music. So there's no story, there's no plots, nothing. So these two are the opposite. Absolute music is the opposite of program music. Right? Then this question that I skipped here, we talked about how Italy was an important center for music until the 17th century, early 18th century. Now, in Vienna in the 18th century. Now, Paris, which was a very important city for music. So the question is, which city was very important during the 19th century? And you would say Paris. I will give you a bunch of cities, and you have to remember that is Paris. So that is it. So there are 50 questions in the exam. You can count them here. They're in the rubric 2. Make sure you use this. That's what I just used. Rubric number 2 for the exam 2 from the midterm. There are 50 questions total. And again, just look back at the slides. But these are the questions. There's nothing more, nothing less. Okay? See you next lecture.